area. This is one of the most important areas in Microsoft projects. Now, if you look at it, this interface is called the Gantt chart as it is written here. This is the Gantt chart interface. I'm sure most of you who have done theories in Microsoft in project management, you get to understand what a Gantt chart is. Now, the interface, the Gantt chart interface is actually divided into two phases. Now, it's divided by this streamline. Now, we have the right hand side and the left hand side. Now, let's start with the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, we have some series of headings: the task move, the task name, the duration, the start, the finish, the predecessors, the resource names, and add new columns. Now, let's first of all let's start with the task move. Now, what is a task move? In Microsoft projects, you have the opportunity of designing a project from a manual schedule, or you design it from an automatic schedule. Now, let's take for example, if I click on this, drop this down arrow, you notice there's a drop down arrow that appears when I select this cell. Now, if you select this cell down, if you take on the drop down, you see manually scheduled and auto schedule. Now, when you talk about the manually scheduled, for example, if I select the manual schedule, which is currently showing at the interface, I'm simply telling Microsoft projects that, hey, I want to do these calculations alone. I'm an expert and I don't really need assistance. I can do the calculations and everything alone. But now, if I select the auto schedule, it means I'm actually telling Microsoft that I want you to do the calculations, to do the planning, to do the costing, and to do the timing at the level of the resources of materials, human, and costing. Now, that is it with the task mode. So the task mode now identifies whether an activity is manually scheduled or an activity is auto scheduled, which therefore implies that if I click here and I select auto schedule, have you seen? It gives you the start and the finish date automatically. But when you select the manual schedule, automatically it doesn't. Now, what is the task name? Now, under the task name, we have what we call, these are the activities that we are going to carry out in the project. Normally, in project management, we have a terminology that we call the WBS. Now, what is the WBS? The WBS means the work breakdown structure. Now, how do you break down a project? Because you cannot execute a project without breaking down the project into what? Sub-activities, into smaller activities. So the task name, everything that you find under the task name are the activities that have been broken down using the work breakdown structure. So which means that which are the activities that we are supposed to carry out. For example, we have the site preparation and clearing, because the project that we'll actually be working on is a construction project. I choose this for the construction project because at least everybody has a common idea of what construction is all about. Now, the duration. Now, duration simply refers to what is the time frame that you're going to use to execute each activity. So if you look at this, we have the site preparation for the activity or the task name, and then the duration for this activity for site preparation and clearing is 3 days. Now, the point of estimation starts, that is today, it's supposed to start on the 22nd and to finish when? On the 24th. Why? It's because it's just 3 days. Now, the next we have is the predecessors. Now, what are predecessors? This is one of the very most important key aspects in projects. Why? Because predecessors, by one definition, all the time, most of the time when I define predecessors, are those activities that come before another activity. So we always refer to it as the before activities, which, let's take for example, under the construction, the site preparation and clearing, excavation and foundation works. You notice that the activity site preparation and clearing comes before the activity excavation and foundation works. Mr. Joachim, I think somebody is actually behind. I don't know if they need to move the person. Okay, so what are the predecessors? The predecessors will give us exactly what we are supposed, which activity comes before which activity, which therefore means that if there is a predecessor, which is the before activity, therefore there should be an after activity. Let's come back here. We have the site preparation and clearing, which is activity 1. We have excavation of foundation works, which is activity 2. Therefore, activity 1 is an activity that comes before activity 2, and activity 2 is an activity that comes after activity 1. So we have what we call the after activities and the before activities. So how do we call the after activities? The after activities are called the successors. But now if you look on the screen here, you will notice that the after activities, that is the successor activities, is not found on the names given. What we have there is the resource names. Now, so what do? We need to insert the successors. Now, how do we insert the successors? We right click, we go to insert colon, and then we go to the keyboard and we type successors. Now, once you click, automatically we have created the successors. Now, after the successors, now which are all those activities that comes after the activities that come before? Now, the next is what? We have the resource names. Now, what are the resource names? The resource names are simply who is responsible for doing what. One of them, if you notice, most projects fail because there is no clear line of responsibility of who is responsible for doing what. It becomes very difficult. Like when things go wrong, everybody starts saying, I'm not responsible, it's not my responsibility, it's not me. But when things go right, everybody wants to get I'm responsible for that. So the resource name actually identifies who is responsible for doing what and how are they going to do it. Now, add new column now simply refers to, we can add anything. For example, if I want to add, for example, cost, I can insert the cost. For example, and put the cost. It's going to give us the different forms of cost that exist. You see, it gives you the different costs that exist. But for now, this is not our interest. I just wanted to show how it works. So let me hide that for now. Now, before we actually go fully into details, let's go to the right-hand side. Now, let's look at the right-hand side. If you look at the right-hand side, you will notice that there are some bars that are actually inserted, which is directly related. If you look at this line here that I've selected, there are some bars that are actually represented per task of activities that are there. Here, we have some bars. Now, these bars represent each activity. For example, site preparation and clearing. The duration is 3 days. Now, after this duration, this bar on the right-hand side here gives the exact time frame of 3 days that this activity, site preparation and clearing, is supposed to be done. Now, look up at the top here. You will notice that there are some letters. We have M, T, W, T, F, S, S. Now, these letters represent the days of the week, which means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, let's get back to this activity, site preparation. Now, on site preparation, we said the duration was 3 days. Now, if the duration was 3 days, assuming that the project starts on Monday, given that the SS is great, that's the SS, that's Saturday and Sunday, is actually great. Why? Because as of now, Microsoft Project assumes that Saturdays and Sundays are known working days. Normally, we started this project today, we started designing the project today. But because of the fact that we have assumed that Saturdays and Sundays are known working days, it therefore implies that the activity will start on Monday. That's why you see it starts on Monday, Tuesday, and it ends when? The activity is estimated to end on Wednesday this coming week. Now, before we go ahead, there are some certain things that we will need to make some adjustments. Like, for example, if you notice, all these activities here, they are manually scheduled. And we want our activities to be auto-scheduled because this is actually the basics. And we cannot start the basics by working on manually scheduled activities. Let's take the auto scheduled activities so that Microsoft project can so they can actually see how Microsoft project functions. Now, to do that, there are some basic adjustments that we need to do at the back office of Microsoft projects. Now, how do we go to the back office? Now, we go to File, we go to Options, and then we go to, this is the back office of Microsoft projects. This is the back office. Now, under the back office, we now have different aspects. For example, we have the general option. Now, under the general option, we have the screen tips, we have the project preview, we have the personalized, we have which other functions. Now, we'll go to the key aspects that are very important. Now, if you notice, you will notice that under the display tab, the calendar is Gregorian calendar. But we have a problem. What is the problem? The problem is actually showing that our current currency is in US dollars here, but our local currency is franc CFA. So we need to convert our currency from US dollars to what? To franc CFA. So to do that, we click on the drop down arrow. We take the ZAF because at the international level, we consider ZAF. We consider ZAF, I think. Okay. Now we consider ZAF. This is it. ZAF. Now we have converted now our currency to franc CFA. Now the next thing we need to do now is we need to check how we want to manage the project. Now, when does the project start? It says the project week starts on a Sunday. No, we put the week to start on a Monday. Physical start here in January. The default start time of the project per day, 8 a.m. Default finish time, 5 p.m. Hours per day put in is 8 hours. Hours per week is 40. Days per month is 20, given that Saturdays and Sundays are known working days. Now, here, most of the time, another key aspect is in Microsoft projects, this is one of the key advantages, show assignment units as per percentage or as per decimal. Most of the times, one of the key advantages of Microsoft project is that Microsoft project is capable of identifying to you, the project manager, that you are overtasking a particular group of employees and not overtasking maybe others. The employee may never complain that I'm being overtasked with work. At one point, you just find the employees' efficiency reducing. Why? Because the employee is overtasked with work, and when an employee is overtasked with work, automatically it starts reducing the employee's efficiency. So this is one of the key areas where Microsoft project actually identifies to you and tell you that, hey, this particular employee, for example, Mr. Neba, you're overtasking Mr. Neba with labor. There is need for you to reduce. If not, if you keep doing that, it's going to reduce his level of efficiency to carry out the work. Now, at another level, we have new task created, manually scheduled. Now, you need the correction here, what we have here at this level, that shows that all our activities are manually scheduled. No matter what we do, if we don't correct it at the back office to show that it is auto-scheduled, whether we have a million activities to carry out, we will need to, for each time you create the activity, it's going to show manually scheduled, manually scheduled, manually scheduled, manually scheduled. So we need to convert it to be sure that they become auto-scheduled. Reason why, we will select now the auto-schedule, and then with that, I guess probably now we click OK. Now when we click OK, it therefore means that we have done the basic adjustments and we can start executing our plan. Now I'm clicking OK. So I have done that. Now, doing that now, if you look down here now, you notice that our new task now is being scheduled from, it has moved from manual schedule now to what? Auto schedule. So we just come here now, we convert all of this now and give it auto schedule. Now watch what happens on the right hand side. Once I start converting the activities into auto schedule. Now let me do all the conversions. Okay, now we've done all of that. Now we notice that from ID 5, from activity 5, no, from activity 6, right up to activity 10, they all have 1 day of execution. Now, I left this because I actually want you to see how they react. The reactions are here when we key in the right durations. These ones are estimated durations that Microsoft Project will give each time you create a new task. So let's take, for example, ID6, electrical installation is 1 day. Now let's give electrical installation 4 days. Now, watch what happens here once I enter the 4 days. Have you seen? It automatically increases to show the corresponding increase in the duration for that activity. Now the next is what? We have activity 7. It has a duration of 8 days. Now activity 8 has a duration of 6 days. Activity 9 has a duration of 5 days. And activity 10 has a duration of 4 days. Now, we have actually created all the basic activities from that we are going to use to run the project. So we either call them tasks or we call them activities. Now we have the task, we have the duration, we have the start date, and we have the finish date. And then adding to that, we have the predecessors and the successors, and then the resource names. Now the next thing we are supposed to do now is we will just go direct to start understanding how we schedule activities. Now, if you notice, let's come back here at the level of the timeline. The timeline shows that the activity will start on the 22nd, which is Monday the 22nd, and is going to finish on the 3rd of July. That is the estimated duration as of now. But what you notice is we have not scheduled any of the activities here. That's why all of them are in one line. Now, the next thing we're supposed to do now is let's see how to schedule activities. Now, once we start scheduling the activities, it's going to give us the exact duration in which this project is supposed to run and how it's supposed to be done. Now, let's start with the first one. Now, to do that, we need to schedule the first activity. To schedule the first activity, now we select ID1. We hold down the control key and then we select ID2. Now, we go to the task. Now, under the task, we go to schedule. Now, under the schedule, we go to the schedule group. We go to link. If you notice, it says link the selected task. Unlink the selected task. Now, watch what happens here once I click select task. And watch how it starts affecting the timeline and everything in the project. Now, watch. Have you seen? Have you noticed that there is an arrow now that links ID1 and ID2? And now you notice some figures, some numbers have been created under the successors and the predecessors. Now we notice that under ID1, site preparation, the successor has a 2. Under ID2, excavation and foundation, the predecessor has a 1. What does it mean? It brings us back to what I was saying, that ID1 here, site preparation and clearing, is succeeded, that's under successor, is succeeded by ID2, which is what? Excavation and foundation. And ID2, excavation and foundation works, is preceded by what? ID1, site preparation and clearing. So which means these numbers that you see here are a representative of these ID numbers that you find here. That's to give the interpretation for the 2. Now let's create for the next. Let's go to ID2. We select ID2. We hold down the control key and then we select ID3 and then we link. Now have you seen? The procedure keeps going. It now moves from ID1, 2, and now 3. Now the durations keep increasing. Now for the durations, as it keeps increasing, now we are going to link now for all the other activities. So I'll hold ID3, hold on the control key, and then I'll select for all the other activities. Now watch what happens when I click link. Have you seen? It shows that, please, 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 I'm having a discussion, please. Now you notice that all the other activities have been linked. They have been linked. But now it becomes difficult because you need it becomes difficult because you need to be scrolling the project from right to left to be able to see what you have done. But with that said, one thing is very clear. To solve that problem, it becomes very easy. We need to go to we need to go to view. Now under the view tab, we go to the Zoom group. Under the Zoom group, we see entire project. Now watch what happens at this level when we create the entire project. When I click on the entire project. Now, watch. Have you seen? It gives, this is the interface now of what we call a finish to start relationship that exists between the different activities. What does this explain? This here explains that for ID1, site preparation, for ID2, site excavation and foundation works to start, ID1 must be completed. For ID3, foundation concrete and curing to start, ID2 must be completed. For ID4 to start, ID3 must be completed. That is simply the explanation of what is happening for these arrows that you see that move. So this one shows that it gives the relationship of finish to start per activity. It gives a finish to start per activity. Now, to go ahead, there is something we call in Microsoft project that, like they say in a family, the head of the family normally is always the father. Now, it's the same thing with projects, and the father manages all the other family, like the mother, the children, is responsible. It's the same thing with Microsoft projects. Microsoft projects have what we call project summary task. Now, what is the project summary task? The project summary task actually gives, it accumulates and makes the activities of the project to become a family, such that we have the main, who is the father, and then all the subs, the mother and the children who depend on the father for survival. So what we are going to do right now is we need to create what? We need to create the project summary task. And to create the project summary task, we need to go to format, which we are in already. We go to show hide group. And if you look up here, we have what we call the project summary task. Now watch what happens to ID1 when I select the project summary task. Watch here at this level. Watch. Now have you seen? It saves it by what? CAPA free webinar training. That was how I saved the project when I was creating this interface. So if you notice now, it shows that here, if you look at our summary in terms of duration, says that this project is going to run for 57 days based on the information that I've keyed in. It's going to run for 27 days. And these 27 days, the project is going to start on the 22nd of June and it's going to finish on the 9th of August. That is the summary for the project for now. Now, the next thing now that we have to do is, in project management, in Microsoft projects, one thing is very clear. Let's take, for example, site preparation and clearing. Activities usually have what we call, for example, activity one, site preparation and clearing. Activities usually have what we call sub-activities. For example, if the site preparation and clearing, it means for this site to be prepared, one of the sub-activities is to get the area clear, to prepare it for what? Excavation and foundation works. Now let's assume that excavation and foundation works and foundation concrete and foundation concrete are sub-activities to site preparation and clearing. Let's take, for example, these two activities are sub-activities to this. Now we have to make it in such a way that for this activity 1 to be done, activity 2 and 3, activity 2 and 3 must be executed. So how do we do that? We need to make this now a sub-activity. Activity 2 and 3 are sub-activities. Therefore, we select ID2. Let's make it a sub-activity. We go to task. Under the task, we go to schedule. Under the schedule, we have what we call the indents and the outdents. Now, we need to indent ID2 to make ID1 a summary task. Now, how do we do that? You simply come here and then you click. Now, watch what happens to ID1 when I indent ID2. ID1 will automatically become a summary task. Now, watch. ID2 and then we indent. Now, watch what happens to ID1. Have you seen? ID1 now has become bold and it has a slight drop down arrow. It therefore clearly explains that ID2 is now a sub-activity of ID1. Which means that if I click on this drop down arrow, watch what happens to ID2 when I click on this drop down arrow. Watch. Have you noticed that ID2 now is covered, has automatically disappeared from the screen? It shows that ID2 now is a sub-activity of ID1. Now let's make ID3 a sub-activity also. Now let's indent. Now it shows that ID2 and ID3 are sub-activities to what? Are sub-activities to ID1 here. Now let's click now and watch what happens. Let's click on this drop-down arrow. You realize that it swallows the two, so which means it swallows ID1, ID2, and ID3. Now, same thing for ID4 here at this level. We can assume that ID5 and ID6 and ID5 and ID6 are a sub-activity to ID4. So we select ID5 and then we indent. Now, have you noticed ID4 becomes a summary task, while ID5 becomes a sub-summary task. It has pulled inward, while ID5 now becomes bold. Now, ID6 also becomes what? ID6 becomes, let's make ID6 a sub-activity. Same thing. We notice that ID6 and ID5 are now sub-activities to ID4. ID5 and ID6 are now a sub-activity to ID4. We can now make ID7 a sub-summary activity, a sub-activity to ID6, which means ID7 would depend on ID6, and ID6 depends on ID4. So let's make ID7 a sub-activity. What do? We indent it twice. We indent it the first time, and then we indent. Then watch what happens now with ID6 when I indent ID7 the second time. Now watch. Have you seen now that ID6 has automatically become now a sub-task, a sub-summary task, which therefore means that activity 7, plumbing installation, is a sub-activity to ID6. It's a sub-activity to ID6. And ID6 is a sub-activity to it's a sub-activity to ID4, and a sub-activity to the main activity, CAPA free webinar training on Microsoft projects. So this is how it works. Now, if you notice, for each time that we create, for example, we have ID1, ID4, ID6. They now have durations that are bold. Their start and finish dates have been bold. This indicates that these two here gives a sum of this. For example, if you take 7 plus 5, it's going to give you 12, which means that these two activities, as I said here, they all depend on site preparation. Now, let's take, for example, now let's look at the next one. Now, let's assume that ID9 here, let's assume that ID10 is a standalone activity that doesn't depend on anybody. Now, let's take ID9 and 10. Let's assume that ID10 depends on ID9. So let's make ID9 a sub-summary task. Now, to make ID9 a sub-summary task, we have to indent ID10. Now, if you notice, you will discover that our project is actually taking shape. If you haven't noticed that the total duration that we had that was from has removed from 57 days down to 35 days. Now, this is based on what? This is based on the sub-summary activities that we have created for the project. Now, once we have done this, the next thing we need to do now is, let's assume that our project is going to run in 2 phases. We have phase 1 and then we have phase 2. Now, we need to let's create the first phase to show that this project actually depends on that. Now, before we do that, let's come here and look at ID1. This is bar shows that for ID2 and 3, they fall under ID1. Same thing for these others. But now the key essence here first is to understand how to adjust, because there are some errors here. Why am I saying so? Because when we're doing the adjustment at the level, when we're doing the adjustment at the level of the sub-summary task, there's need for us to do the adjustments also at the level of the Gantt chart presentation structure here, the pictorial presentation. So how does it work? The first part of it is we have to correct this. We have ID2, ID3. Activities are supposed to depend on activities, and sub-summary tasks are supposed to depend on summary tasks. Sub-summary tasks are supposed to depend on summary tasks. So how does it work? We need to make sure that activities, because these are the sub-summary tasks that we have. These ones, ID1, ID4, ID6, and ID9. These are the sub-tasks that actually exist. So we have to make sure that activities are connected only to activities, and then sub-tasks are connected only to sub-tasks. So what do? We need to make sure that for all those activities that are connected to sub-tasks, for example, let's look at ID3 and ID4. ID3 and ID4. Have you noticed that the bar is connected to this activity, is connected to this bar? So it's not correct. We have to make sure that bars are connected to bars and the activities are connected to activities. So what do? We need to undo ID3 and ID4. We select the 2 and then we go to the task tab and then we unlink them. Now, if you notice, it has been unlinked. ID3 and ID4 have been unlinked. Now, same thing here. There's a problem at this level too, which we have to correct. That's ID5 and ID6. We have to unlink too. Same thing here. There's also a problem at this level of ID9 and ID10. So which means we have to unlink. No, excuse me, it's ID8. Yes, ID8 and ID9. We have to unlink. Correct. So this is actually what is happening. So what we need to do now is we need to link now the activities based on what? Based on their summary task. So how do we link it? We link ID1 and ID4. Now watch what happens here when I link the 2 activities. Watch. Have you seen? It now shows that activity 1 here, sub-summary task 1 and sub-summary task 4 have been linked together, which means it has created a link between the two. Now, the next one now we need to do now is we need to link ID 4 and ID 9. We have to link the two. Now, this is it. Now, why are we not going to link ID6? We cannot link ID6 because ID6 is a sub-summary task to ID4. ID6, electrical installation, is a sub-summary task to what? It's a sub-summary task to ID4, which is wall constructions. So our project is actually taking a stable shape. Now let's go back and see. Have you noticed that now our duration has dropped down further from 26 days down to what? Down to from 35 days down to 26 days. Now let's go ahead now. The next thing that we're supposed to do now is at this level, we now understand, we now know the activities. Which activity depends on which activity for survival. Which activity is supposed to be carried out first. It's already clearly stated here. It starts here, 2, 3, 5, 8, 5, 7, 8, and 10. That is the model of execution of the different activities. While these activities are represented by what? They are represented by the predecessors and the successors. That's which activity comes first, which activity is supposed to be executed first, and which activity is supposed to be executed after. Now, at this stage, let's keep it at this interface now. And I want us to take us to the second interface. Now, what is the second interface? The second interface of this project simply explains that we want to look at now, how do we schedule resources to activities? Like I said, one of the key problems with projects, why most projects fail in Cameroon, is because when projects are being executed, the project managers find it difficult to identify who is responsible for doing what, especially when there is a project creep, when the project is actually creeping away from the area in which they were supposed to be moving towards. Now, let's move now to the second phase. Now, what is the second phase? I'll take you people now to the resource sheet. Now, this is the resource sheet. Now, under the resource sheet, given the fact that we're already running out of time, I had to create a sample sheet. Now, the resource sheet, as you see here, the resource sheet, this is where all resources that are supposed to be run for the project are used, are being labeled. You cannot actually assign a resource at the level of the Gantt chart area without first of all identifying all the resources under the resource sheet. And basically, there are basically 3 types of resources. Now, before we go to that, let's try to look at the different identifications for the projects, the identical names under the resource sheet. Now, the first is the resource name. The resource name is either human, material, or fixed cost. So these are the names of the people the names of the people, the materials, or the cost that we are going to incur during the project. Now, under this, now we have the type. And like I said, it is under the type of project, because once you click on the cell directly below the type, it is under the type that it tells you whether the type of resource, it gives you the type of resource that you want to use. For example, project manager. Project manager is human. Therefore, like I said, there are 3 types of resources. If we click on this drop-down arrow, we'll see them. We have work, we have materials, and then we have cost. Let's check. You see, we have work, we have materials, and then we have cost. Now, work, as they said, is defined by the people, by humans. That's the human resource that are responsible for executing the different activities of the project. Materials. Materials simply refers to what are we going to use. For example, the cement, the sand, the paint, the tiles, the roof sheet, the materials that we use for construction. And the cost. This cost now has to do with fixed cost. Why is it fixed cost? It is fixed cost in the sense that there are some certain costs that does not vary, because in accounting we have what we call the variable cost and the fixed cost. Now let's take for example, if we had to recruit a consultant to actually work on a particular part or on a particular activity in the project, this is the level of the consultant down here. Now this consultant probably can be put at the level of the cost because we're going to pay that consultant a fixed amount. Same thing for land. If we want to buy land, we need a fixed amount to buy that land. Building permit, we need a building permit from the council. Depending on the type of building, would determine the type of building would determine the amount that we're supposed to pay for the building permit. So these ones that are fixed machines, they all fall under fixed cost. So you actually need to know the difference. Now the next here we have is material. For materials now will be determined at the level of this, which the measurement of the materials. How do we measure the material? For example, gravel is measured in terms of what? Cement is measured in terms of what? Maybe kilograms. We are going to measure all of them at this level. Initials are the initial names of the different resources. Group, we keep it for now. Then marks. This marks here is very important. It is at the level of the marks that determines the capacity of the human resource. Like I said, one of the key advantages of Microsoft Project is it identifies when a project manager overtasks a particular employee. And we know that once an employee is overtasked, it automatically reduces the capacity of that, the efficiency of that employee to do his job. So it is at this level here that Microsoft Project uses to measure the capacity of the workers. Now, standard rate, the STD rate. Now, if you see here, we have some certain amount. Here, once it falls under the project manager, it measures it in terms of rate. It measures it in terms of rate. Now, what about the rate? The rate has to do with Microsoft Project measures payment not on the basis of salary. It measures payment on the basis of wages. That's per hour. So which means if you see 7,500 francs here, it simply says that Microsoft, this project manager here, will be paid 7,500 francs per hour. And then OVT here means overtime rate, which means if he puts in an extra, let's say normally, based on our measurement, we said the work starts at 8 and it finishes at 5 p.m. Now, if he exceeds 5 p.m., Microsoft Project is going to calculate the extra amount. That's the difference between the 10,000 and the 7,500. And to pay that, you are paying this person now 10,000 francs instead of 7,500 per hour. Now, cost per use, and then we keep that for now, and then the accrue. Now, this one is also very important. The accrue is very important. Now, what is the accrue? For those who are versed with accounting, accrue simply means owings. It means owings. When a company is owing. For example, when people work in a company, the company is supposed to pay them at the end of the month. Now, if the company has not paid them, therefore the company accrues that the workers for that month, which means they have not paid. Now, this is some form of accounting. So if you click on the drop down, the cell below the accrue, you'll notice that there's what we call it in there, prorated. Now, if we click, there are three types of accrues. We have the prorated, we have the start, and we have the end. Now, if we take prorated, for example, what is prorated? As it is selected here, prorated simply means you pay as you go. Let's take, for example, we want to dig the foundation of the project. We want to dig the foundation of the house. Now, let's take, for example, that the digging of the foundation is going to take 5 days and it's going to cost 50,000. On average, it means that whoever is digging that foundation, you will pay that person on average 10,000 francs per day, which means you're paying 10,000 at the end of the day for 5 days, which means you will take the 50,000 francs and then you divide for 5 days, which means at the end of every day, you pay 10,000. That is prorated. Means you take the amount and you spread it and you pay on daily basis. Now, when you select, if you select start simply means that you will pay the person before the person starts the work. Let's say, for example, if the work is supposed to start on this coming Monday and finish on Friday, it means you pay the person on Monday in the morning before the person starts the work. But this is a little bit risky because you may pay the person and the person decides not to come to do the job again. Then the last one is what? N. Now, what is N? N simply means that you will not pay the person until the person has completed the work at 5 p.m. on Friday in the evening. So this prorated, the accrue is very important, and it is carried out per resource. So now, what are we going to do now? The next thing we're supposed to do now, given that we already understood the basics. Now, the calendars, there are three types of calendars. If you check, we have 24 hours. If I select 24 hours, it means I'm indicating that this project manager is going to work 24 hours. If I select night shift, it means he works only in the night. And if I select standard, it means he works from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the evening. Now, let's come back here now. Let's take, for example, let's start making the necessary adjustments. Like I said, humans are work. Materials is materials. Fixed cost is fixed cost. Now, let's take, for example, the first is the project manager. The project manager is human. So if the project manager is human, so we select the type. It is work. So we leave it at the level of work because work is referred to as humans. So the amount maintained and the overtime maintained. Now, Mace the mason, the person that does the little jobs around, he is human. So we maintain it at work. The electrician maintains what? The electrician is also human. So we maintain work. Now let's come to cement. Cement is a material for construction. Now, if cement is a material for construction, it means the type here. We click on the drop down. Now, watch what happens here when I select materials. Watch. Have you noticed now that the materials has become 0? Now, what is the next thing that we do? We have to put materials. Cement is measured at the level of kgs. So we'll assume that at the level of Cameroon, our bags of cement is measured in terms of 50 kg. So we'll put there 50 kilogram. Now, 50 kilogram, given that, what is the estimated cost? The estimated cost is 5,000 francs. Let's say it's 5,000 francs for a bag of cement. Please excuse me. Now, let's come to gravel. Gravel is how much? Gravel is measured in terms of trips. Let's say a trip of gravel. Let's say a trip of gravel. Let's put it at the level of materials. We say trip of gravel. Now, how much does it cost? It's going to cost, let's say it costs 240,000 a trip. Now, let's take for sand. Sand is materials. Let's say it's going to cost us 120,000 francs a trip. Now, let's go to paint. Now, at the level of paint, paint is still a material. Now, for trips, we put trip here for sand, since it's the trip of sand. Now, for paint, let's measure paint in terms of tins, because 20 liters will make 1 tin. Let's assume that we're buying in terms of tins. Now, let's say a tin of paint is 20,000 francs. Now, tiles is materials. Let's assume that it's going to be, let's say, a square. We have to put tiles, we have to measure tiles in terms of 1 meter square. 1 meter square. You must always know the exchange rate, because if you don't know the exchange, it becomes difficult. So it's 1 meter square. So 1 meter square, let's assume that 1 meter square for the tiles that we're using is 15,000 francs. Now for the roof sheet, that's the zinc, it is a material. We measure it in terms of 1 sheet. 1 sheet of zinc. So we put it at the cost of, let's say 1 sheet of zinc cost, let's say 20,000. Now at this level now, we discover that, let's update this one. For the cement, it was 5,000. We have updated that. Now let's come back at this level here for cement here. We have what? We have the accrual cement. We buy the cement before we use, so we select start. Here, sand, we buy before we use, so we select start. Sand, we buy before we use, we select start. Paint, we buy before we use, so we select start. Tiles, we buy before we use, so we select start. Same thing with roof sheet. We buy before we use, so we select start. Now, at the level of the machines, now, let's assume that the machines were bought at a fixed cost or was rented at a fixed amount. Now, if those machines were rented at a fixed amount, therefore, let's say it's going to be a cost. So we're not going to leave it at work, so take cost. Now, once you take cost, everything here automatically will become blank. Now watch. Have you seen? We cannot fill any information here. The cost will be filled at the level of the Gantt chart area when we are costing the materials. Now let's take, for example, let's come back now here at the level of cost. Let's assume that we are paying these machines, we are renting the machines, which means it's supposed to be prorated, which means we pay as we use the machines. Now building permit. I think for the building permit, it's a cost, and then we make it start. Let's make it start. For the land, let's assume that for the land, it's prorated. It's prorated. Now, the land is cost, and let's leave it at prorated. Now, for the consultant, let's assume that we're not going to pay the consultant until the end of the job. So we assume that we could put the consultant at a fixed cost, but we make it that we are paying him only at the end when he has finished the job. Now, at this instance, we have actually measured the trips. We have actually measured 1 trip of sand. Let's make it 1 trip. Now let's go back now at the level of we are done with adjusting all the different interfaces here. So which therefore means that let's go back now to our Gantt chart area. Now what is the next thing now that we are supposed to do? The next thing that we are supposed to do now is assigning the resources to the various activities. For example, who is responsible for doing what? It is very important. Who is responsible for doing what? Now, so what do we do? First, before we go ahead, let's go to projects, the project tab. Let's go to project information. I want us to check out something. Here, it shows this interface here gives a summary of the project. Now, the project starts on the 20th and finishes on the 20th. On Saturday, same thing. Now let's come down now. It shows the finish date and all these activities. Now let's rush and come down here, statistics. Let's look at the statistics. Now when you click on statistics, it takes us to another new interface. Now this area now is very important. We have the current, we have the baseline, we have the actual, we have the remaining. Now we have the duration, we have the work, and we have the cost. Now how does it read? This is the current situation of the project. What is the duration? 26 days for the project to run. Total hours that have been put in so far, 0 hours have been put in so far. Nobody has done any job. Total costing, no costing has been done. Now baseline, what is baseline? A baseline is simply, it takes a snapshot of the project. Once you have completed your project, to save a baseline, it takes a snapshot of the project. and keeps it somewhere within the project, such that when you start executing, the project, now Microsoft project now starts doing a comparative analysis between what? The baseline and the actual. Baseline, this is what we want to do. Actual is what is happening in the field. And there will always be a variance between the baseline and the actual, because it becomes very difficult to say we planned that we're supposed to spend 500,000 francs to do the construction of the foundation. And at the end, we spend exactly 500,000. It's always basically there are two options. We either spend more than 500,000 or we spend less than 500,000. It always becomes very difficult to spend the exact amount that we had budgeted to use. So that is it for the essence of the baseline. We have the actual, which is what is actually happening supposed to be happening in the field, and remaining. How much is remaining in the project that we have not used so far when it comes to the duration, when it comes to the work, and when it comes to the cost. Now, why am I showing you this interface? I'm showing you this interface because we are about to start assigning the resources to the various activities. When we assign all the resources to the various activities, we will now come back now and do our verifications again. Now, let's close this interface. Now, we want to start assigning the resources. To start assigning the resources, what happens? First things first, let's start here. We want to assign, let's say, for example, the project manager is responsible for the execution of this project. Now, we go to resource. Under the resource, we go to assignment. Under the assignment, we have this command called the assign resource. Now, when I click on this assign resource command, watch what happens. A new interface pops up. Now, let's pull it up. Now, have you noticed that this interface now shows all those resources that we created at the level of, the resource sheet? It has done that. So, all the resources that we created at the level of the resource sheet, they are here now. It has been assigned, it has been registered under the assign resource interface. So which means there's basically no way you can actually assign a resource at the level of the Gantt chart area to an activity without first of all doing what? Without first of all creating that resource under the resource sheet. Now, like I said, let's take, for example, let's start with ID2. Digging of the foundation. Let's assume that the digging of the foundation is supposed to be carried out by the mason. Now watch what happens when I click assign. Watch. Because you must first of all select the activity that you want to assign the resource to. You want to assign mason to this. Now watch. Now watch what happens here when I click assign. Have you seen? Mason has been assigned to excavation and foundation. Now watch, Microsoft has automatically calculated how much they will pay mason after he completes this project, this activity, 120,000 francs. Now, which means let's check on mason. Now the activity starts on Monday the 22nd and it's going to finish on the 26th of June. Now let's go to the second activity. Foundation concrete. Let's assume that it's supposed to be carried out by the project manager. Let's assign. Now, how much are we supposed to pay the project manager? The project manager has been assigned, and it's going to cost 420,000 francs to pay the project manager for that activity when he finishes. Now, let's go to 5, roofing. Let's assume that the roofing is going to be carried out by the mason. We assign. Now, let's keep doing the assigning. Plumbing. Let's assume that the plumbing is supposed to be done by the electrician. Now, plastering and finishing, let's assume it's going to be done by the mason. And final inspection and handover, let's say it's supposed to be done by the project manager. Supposed to be done by the project manager. Now, we have done a series of assignments. As you can see, we have done a series of assignments. Now, let's go back now to that project. Let's go back to the project summary. Let's go back to the project statistics and see what has happened. Let's go to project summary statistics. Let's go to statistics. Now, have you checked? Now, see what happens. Have you noticed that now the total cost so far at the level of our project stands at what? Stands at 1,364,000. The total days is 26 days. The total hours that will cost, the total hours for this cost is 280 hours to put in to complete this project. So far at the level of the people that are available for the job. Now let's continue doing let's continue assigning. Let's come back here. Let's assume that who is supervising the project, the excavation. Let's say it's the project manager. Who is the project manager working at this level? Let's say the technician. Let's assign the technician at the level of roofing. Let's say it's the project manager is supervising at the level of plumbing. The project manager is supervising at the level of plastering. The project manager is supervising, and at the level of inspection, let's say he does it with maybe with the consultant to be sure everything is okay. Now he assigns that. Now, before I go ahead, if you guys noticed some human figure like interfaces have appeared at this level, we'll come and check that later on once we are done doing the assignment. Now let's assume that first we want to assume land. For land, let's assume that the land was bought at this level of at the level of excavation. Let's assign land. Now at the level of land, this is area where we assume that how much did we buy the land? Let's say we bought the land for 5 million. You have to put the amount 5 million. Have you seen? It automatically gives that land cost 5 million francs. Now we're supposed to buy machines. How much did we buy the machines? Let's say we bought the machines for 3 million or rented the machines for 3 million. Now watch. We rented the machines to start the work for 3 million. Now for cement, how many bags of cement do we want to buy? Let's say, for example, at the level of the concreting of the foundation, how many bags of cement do we want to buy? Let's say we want to buy, um, 5 bags of cement. So what will happen is, since we are running out of time, what will happen is we should check at the level of what we have assigned so far. Let's go back now and check the level of our project information and project statistics. Now, have you noticed that the project has climbed up to 11,084,000? Now, the more you assign resources, the more the project increases, the more the amount increases, and the number of hours now has moved up to 528 hours, still maintaining 28 days of work to be done. Now, let's come back now. This is where my interest was here. Have you noticed that there are some red human-like persons here? Now, what does this interpret? Microsoft Project, like I said before, Microsoft Project is capable of identifying people that have been overtaxed with work. Now, these red signs here indicates that Microsoft Project is saying that there is somebody who is overtaxed with work, and we don't know that person yet. Why? Because we have assigned the project manager, we have assigned the mason, we have assigned the consultant, and we have assigned the electrician. We don't know who yet. Now, how do we find out the person that is overtaxed with work? We have to go back to the resource sheet. Now, let's go back to the resource sheet. think I don't know if it's freezing or if you excuse me, I think my machine is freezing. Finding it difficult. Okay, now we have gone back to the resource sheet. Now, if you notice, Microsoft Project has actually identified that the problem that we have is the person that has been overtaxed with work is the project manager. The project manager has too much work such that if we don't do something about it, it might reduce his level of efficiency to perform his work. There are two ways of solving the problem. You send somebody to assist the project manager, or you reduce the amount of work that has been assigned to the project manager. Now, how do we solve that? We come down at the level of the unit. Now, if you notice here, his total capacity to work is 100%. Now, if we move up, let's say we move to 150. Now, 150 shows that we are sending somebody to come and assist the project manager, but that person will be working just half a day, maybe from 8 to 12, not full day. Now, let's click outside and see. Have you noticed? Just the 150 has changed and the others are still in red. It therefore shows that Microsoft Project is simply telling that if we take the person to work just half day with the project manager, it's not really going to help the project manager to do his job. It's not really going to help the project manager. There is need to either the person works full day. So let's take it up to 200 and see, which means the person now works with the project manager full day. Now what? Have you seen? It now goes dark, it goes normal, which means that instead of the project manager to perform the task alone, we need to send somebody, at least one person to work with him, not half a day, but full day. Now, let's come back now to the project, the interface. Now, we have actually assigned the resources, and then the next thing we need to do now is we need to show now that at this level, what has any job work been done yet? Let's go and verify. Let's go to project. Let's go to project information. Let's go to statistics. Now, have you noticed this is work? No work has been done yet because this is actual. Actual is 0. Baseline is 0. No work has been done yet, which therefore means that for no work that has been done, let's try to see what happens when some work, actual work that is started doing implementation in the field. Now, let's come here. Let's stay at the level of the excavation. Let's assume that because there are two ways of doing the calculations for the for actual work to be done. You can do the calculations manually, which is what we're about to do now, or you can do the calculations using the baseline. That's automatically that you're telling Microsoft Project to help you do those calculations, which we will always prefer the calculations, the Microsoft to do the calculations. Now let's look at it first of all at the manual level here. Let's assume that we want this, when you went to the project manager went to the field, did some analysis, and they told him that this activity, excavation and foundation works, have been done 50%. How does he measure it? We go to task. Now under the task, we go to schedule group. Under the schedule group, have you seen there are some tasks up here? Some icons, 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. It shows the level of completeness for this task, for the task that you have selected. You must select the task to do that. So let's say that you were given a report that this task has been done 50%. Now you come here, this is 50%. Now watch what happens here when I click 50%. Watch. Have you noticed that there's a dark blue line in between? Now, when you put the cursor, have you noticed that it shows percent complete, 50%? Now, let's go down to the next one. Let's assume that this one has been completed 75%. Now, let's click. This is 75%. Now, it shows that this activity has been done 75%. Now, let's come down here. Roofing. Now, you were given the report that it has been done, let's say it was done 66%. Now, if we look up here, automatically we don't have 66%. It doesn't exist here. Now, what do we do to do that kind of report? Now, this is where Microsoft Project comes in again with another extraordinary way of doing things. You simply double click on, the interface. Now, it takes you to what we call the task information for that particular task. The particular task that we have carried out, it takes you to that particular task. Every information about this particular task is found under the task information. Roofing, percent complete, 0. Now we assume that this task has been completed 66%, and 66% was not found up here. So we come here now, we type 66, and then watch what happens here when I click 66, when I click OK. Have you seen? So Microsoft Project can actually do the measurement from the level of, at any level of measurement in between. You can even put 66.5, 66.25, 66.75. You can measure it from any level. Now let's come down at the level of activity 7. Let's say this task is 100% complete. It shows. Now this one, let's keep it at this level. Now let's come back up here. Let's come back at the level of projects. Now let's check. Let's go to project information. Now let's go to our statistics. Now have you seen? Microsoft Project now has created the actual, which states that out of the current budget that we had planned, which is 11,084,000, so far we have used how much? 1,149,200. Now what is the actual remaining? It's 9,934,800. Now, what is unique about this analysis is that you can, as a project manager who is very versed with Microsoft projects, you can pick any project from the middle of nowhere, and you know exactly what is currently happening in that project without anybody giving you any feedback about what is happening in the project. Let's say, for example, the current project manager is no longer available, and you have been brought in the middle of the project. These statistics here will give you all the information about what is happening in that project. Which means, if that project manager is not there, going to the bank account, you should be able to find this money, this amount, at the level of the bank. You should be able to see that, know that 9,934,800 should be found in the bank account. They should be able to have used 1,149,000, and then the baseline, you keep it at that, and then they should have used, as of now, they are supposed to have consumed 304 hours out of the 528 hours that is available for the work. And the remaining hours is supposed to be what? 223 hours for the project. That is supposed to be remaining to be executed for that project. So, based on this, we can actually now come to check out what we call the cost. Let's go to the cost. Have you seen? Microsoft Project automatically now provides now the total cost per what? Per subtask. As we see here, the subtask. This is what has been used, this. This has been used cumulative to this. This, and it goes upward, right up to what? The total 11 million that we have at the level of the project. Now, the last thing that we are going to look at is how do we get to see how to use the interpretation for what we have done so far. Now, let's go to resource. Let's go to task usage. Now, this is another clear interface of Microsoft Project, the task usage. What is the task usage? The task usage simply gives a detailed explanation of how the different tasks have been executed and who is responsible for executing those tasks. Let's take, for example, this first one here, 2, excavation. Who are the people responsible? Project manager, the mason, and then we bought the machines, and then we have the land. Now, under that now, if you look from on the right-hand side here, the project manager here, it shows that on Monday, He puts in 8 hours. He puts in 8 hours every day, except Saturdays and Sundays. And that activity was supposed to run for how many days? 3 days. Or was 40 hours. So which means he puts in 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, like that. Now, that is how Microsoft Project has done the breakdown. It goes same for concreting of the foundation. It goes same for the wall. If you look at it detailedly, now this is for the hours in. Now let's take, for example, we want to find out the cost, how much cost that goes with each of it. Now let's take, for example, we want to look the cost. Now let me select cost. What will happen at this interface when I select cost? Have you seen? It gives now the total amount as well as what? The total hours for this amount. Let's take for actual work. Have you seen? It gives the total hours and then the total hours it gives, this is, let's take for example this one, it gives the total hours put in, the total amount that has been used, and the total hours that have been used so far in the project in that particular activity. So it's cumulative. It becomes cumulative. For example, 3, you have this and this. It will give the cumulative from here, 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 right up to the foundation, which has foundation concreting, which has what? 16 hours. It goes same for resource sheet, which is the opposite. No, sorry, it goes same for the resource, the tax sheet goes same for the tax sheet. It gives the same calculations. So all of these here, it gives a lot of Microsoft projects at this level, gives clear understanding, clarifications on how each task is supposed to be carried out, on how all those activities are supposed to be done, and who is responsible for doing what, and how it's supposed to be done. So please, please, I think I will pass it over back to Mr. Joake. Just wanted to give a demo of how Microsoft works and how it actually can help a lot of people out there, especially when it comes to managing projects for companies, personal projects. It's very, very important. This is just a demo. It is far more deeper than this. So I'll pass the floor back to Mr. Joachim. If there are any questions, we can ask. Thank you very much for participating for this presentation. Mr. Joachim, you have the floor. If there are questions.
Thank you, Nebasan. This presentation was very good. So, as you said, we are going to move to a short break before our Q&A session, so people and participants can give their question and you can give the answer. So, before that, we are going to present our CAPA e-learning. So, wait for me to share my screen. Can you stop sharing your screen?
Okay. Um, I don't know if okay, let me stop. I've stopped. You can go ahead now.
Okay. Okay, I hope everybody are getting my screen. Uh, as I was saying, this is the CAPA Kaizen e-learning platform. Uh, this platform is an online platform developed by CAPA and Kaizen Base, which is a Japanese organization. This platform will actually help you build quality and productivity skills at your own pace. The platform offers three main modules. As you can see, the modules one is Kaizen skills, in which you are going to learn about Kaizen spirit, the basic of quality, and the activities of committee quality. The second module is the shop floor performance improvement. In this module, you are going to learn how to improve your performance in operation at the shop floor level. And then you have a last module, the third module, which is human skills. And you will learn about the philosophy of Wu which stands for how to report, how to consult in organization. So this is the three modules in our CAPA e-learning platform. So to benefit this platform, you need to contact us. You have the numbers at the bottom of our screen. You can see the number you can call to learn more about this platform. Also, you have our email to contact us. You can contact us in WhatsApp, Facebook, every platform. You learn more about this CAPA e-learning. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the training. Also, I don't want to forget, I will share a link. This link will help you give your feedback about this session. So feel free to click on the link and give us your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Joachim. I think we are open now for questions. I think, please, let me share back my screen. Let me share my screen.
Okay, Nebasan, I think we already have a question in our chat. Let me
Yes.
read it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, this question is from Mr. William Talek. So, what he is saying is that what is the use of the colon between accrue and overrate? So,
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. I think I actually skipped that one when I actually forgot. Now, for the overtime rate and the accrue, that is cost. It means cost per use. Now, Microsoft project has this tendency of measuring cost when you're using. For example, it falls under at the level of depreciation because normally when you use, for example, a machine, that machine depreciates. So the more you use the machine, the more the machine depreciates. So when they talk about cost per use, Microsoft project has a tendency of assuming that okay, if I've bought maybe a mixer, a concrete mixer to carry out a construction project, what is the level of depreciation that I am going to consider when when depreciating or calculating depreciation for that particular machine. Why? Because it's like most companies will always do. Companies will always carry out depreciations for their machine. For example, they can say that 5% on the total cost. If we, let's say, for example, the total cost, or let's say the machine cost, let's say 100,000, 5% may be probably 5,000 francs. So which means the company will decide that okay, we will be we are going to budget 5,000 francs for each time that at the end of the year, we do the calculations and we put it for what? We put it for depreciation. So this cost per use simply explains the fact that what is the cost that I am going to assume as I am using the machine. I don't know if I've answered his question, if it's clear, or he has more questions to ask. So it is a form of a depreciation because it's very important to depreciate machines as you use them so that by the end of the machine's life, you should be able to have saved some money that you are going to use to buy a new machine. So I think that is the essence of this cost per use. I don't know if it's okay, Mr. Joachim.
I think the question was from Mr. like I said, Mr. William Talek. I don't know if he is
It's okay.
still online.
It's okay for me. I've got the answer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very
Okay,
much
thank
for
you.
the question. Thank you very much for the question, sir. Please, if there are other questions, I think we are open for, I'm open for questions. If not, we have the contact number. You can contact CAPA, you can contact me, and for further trainings, CAPA will provide the trainings. I can come to your company, provide trainings in your company, personal trainings if you want to upgrade your skills on Microsoft, not just on project management, not just on Microsoft projects. We provide trainings on project management because basically one of the key problems why a lot of managers, project managers face difficulties today in managing projects is because you can be a very good project manager, but once you don't have the capacity of knowing how to use a tool, a project management tool such as Microsoft Project, therefore, you're really far behind when it comes to capacity to manage projects. It becomes very difficult, no matter how good you are. That is the essence why CAPA Association was able to provide this training for free. So that let's try to understand that everything that we carry out today now goes in the form of projects. Now, just imagine you having the capacity of using this, knowing how to use this software, knowing how to use this application to manage projects. It goes far more deeper than this. I have just touched the top of the water. It goes far deeper. So I think it's an application that is recommended for everyone, especially for those who are building their career at the level of project management, those who want to work with companies that deal with projects, or those who want to start building their career in projects. I think it's a good application for you guys. It's very good. It's a good application. Most multinational companies, a lot of multinational companies, NGOs, because it's a software that cuts across all walks of life. It cuts across all, it works in every domain of work. So multinational companies, NGOs, they always recommend, like for some jobs, you may find some jobs, and in the jobs, there, one of the requirements is that you should be able to have the skills of knowing how to work with Microsoft projects. So I think it's an application that we need it. So we should think about it. You can contact Papa. Papa will be able to provide more trainings on this session. So once more, if there are no questions, then I think probably I'll pass the floor back to Mr.
I
Joachim.
think there is another question in the chat. Wait 1 second, please.
Okay.
Uh, this one is from Batemi Chafak. So the question is, how can we proceed to ameliorate our capacity on MS project after this webinar? I think this is just what you were talking about. We are going
Yes.
to hold another session, which maybe it is going to be in a physical
Yes.
building. We don't know yet, but we hope that we can organize another session which is going to be physically.
Okay. And also to add to that, I think one of the key essence also is those who have been present, you have witnessed, you've seen what this software can do. Share with your friends, family, colleagues, your organizations. Share with them how this software can be used to ameliorate or improve on your services. Then I think our next session now is going to be physical, where we're going to install now the applications into, we're going to install the applications into your machines. I'll install the applications into your machines. Now we will do the physical training and build now from there. This is just a demo for you to get a sip of what the application is all about. So, Mr. Joachim, I pass the floor back to you if there are no questions.
Okay, I think this is the last thing about our session.